Hi, Brian White is filling in for Buck Levasseur. Welcome to Discovering. You know, the weather in October can be pretty unpredictable here in the UP, but it's always nice enough to go hunting. And some days it's so nice, you just gotta go fishing. I spent a beautiful day on the Menominee River fishing for smallmouth with Northwoods Fishing Guide Mike Mladenik.
Fall is here, and let me tell you, it's my favorite time to fish. Everybody goes hunting, doing duck hunting, bow hunting, whatever it is. That's fine, but I just fish, and I love it. All of a sudden, I find myself alone. I fish on a river or lake, there's nobody there. Guess what? I'm catching a ton of fish.
All that and more tonight on Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. Call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
This time of year, most of the people I know are hanging off the side of a tree somewhere in the woods, or sneaking through the brush with a shotgun in their hands, or maybe hunkered down in a duck blind. But there's one person I know that I can always count on being in a boat with a rod in his hand, hunting for smallmouth. My good friend, smallmouth fishing guide, Mike Mladenik. If you recall, my history with Mike goes back to my first TV show, Fishing with Northwoods Guide Mike Mladenik. So I always look forward to the opportunity to spend a day on the water, catching up on what's new, laughing about old stories. I recently spent a beautiful fall day on the water with Mike and took the opportunity to learn a bit about fall fishing, what to use and when to use it.
Didn't take long, did it? Not a big fish, but on the case minnow, they catch all kinds of fish. Better fish than I thought. Look at that. 4-inch case minnow, sinking minnow. But when using these minnow baits, this is a case sinking minnow. Got a 3/0 wide gap hook. The bottom of the minnow has a little slit. You go through about 1/4 of an inch, run it through. You stick that inside the slot and back up the minnow a little bit, because what you want it to do is just skin hook it on the top of the minnow. But the skin hook part is very important. If you stick it out too far, then you're going to get snagged up on any weed. But if you bury it into the plastic, a lot of times, maybe that split second, you lose a little bit, you get a better hook set with the hook being skin hooked than if it was buried. Basically, if you bury the hook, you'll never get snagged, but you might lose a few fish. But if you just skin hook it a little bit, you might occasionally pick up a weed or two, but you're going to have a better hooking percentage with it. One thing about fishing on a river in the fall, it's fun in the spring, it's fun in the summer. Like, take the summer, for example. I can go out in the summer, catch a lot of fish, a lot of numbers of fish, but I don't catch a lot of real big fish. But at this time of the year in the fall, when you catch a good-sized fish, whether it's a smallmouth or a pike or a walleye for that matter, there's a pretty good odds there's more big fish around. So what I do in the fall that's different is I spend more time in a specific area. In the summer, I'm moving a lot. In the spring, I'm moving a lot. A lot of times in the spring, you have to really work hard to find fish. But in the fall, when you find a fish, a big fish, stick there and you want to fish it for a long period of time, because I guarantee there's more than just one fish there. biting my minnow bait short, so I put on a minnow and right away I catch a fish, nothing to it. They bite short on one bait, you switch baits and catch them. Don't know how big he is yet. You hear that drag sound, that means it's a decent fish. Whoa. Hard to beat river smallmouth fishing in the fall, I'll tell you that. What a dandy. This is your typical fall river smallmouth. Beautiful color. I love it. Hook up another minnow. It's important when you hook these chubs is to keep them as lively as possible. I'm using a number 2/0 Kale hook. Notice how I just go through the lips. If I were to go through the head, it'd kill that minnow and it wouldn't be as effective. This guy's all rigged up and ready to go catch another big smallmouth. There we go again. Oh, big minnow, big fish. At least we hope. A lot of people think smallmouth aren't as active in the late fall when the water gets colder, but believe me, a smallmouth is always a smallmouth. That guy's a tail walker there, huh? I love it. Using that. That's a fat fish. These fish in the fall, I caught that fish about a month ago. I bet this fish weighs about 3/4 of a pound, half a pound more. Just a wonderful Menominee River smallmouth. Fall is here. Guess what? I'm catching a ton of fish. And I'm catching big fish. Oh, nice fish. Why am I catching big fish? Because I'm very versatile in the way that I fish. I'm prepared for anything. I love catching smallmouth in this fall. Actually, any time of the year I love catching them. My favorite bait in the fall, I like to use these minnow type baits, plastic minnow baits, 5-inch baits. Walleye, I'll hit them even, but primarily they're bass baits. Pike, I'll hit them. You get a wide variety of different types of fish. They're easy to use. You rig them weedless on a wide gap hook. You ain't all that long, but it sure got a belly on them. You can throw them in weeds, you can throw them around rocks, you can throw them tight to wood cover, and they're just dynamite catching all variety of different types of fish. Well, they were in all those fish were holding deeper in the fog, and what happened now, the sun comes out, the bait fish start moving into the shallow water, start getting a little more aggressive, and then these big bass like this, they get into the shallow water too. So the sun is a good thing. Fog, it just gets them to hold real tight. They don't move much. That sun gets them to move. The opposite of what most people think. Here, oh, it's a big, nice pike. Well, it's a fish. It's one thing about fishing in a river, you never know what you're going to catch, that's for sure. Oh, that ain't a bad pike. Beautiful fish. Chunky bugger. We're going to have to move though, because he's going to scare my bass out of this spot. Obviously, you're used to catching northern pike, you're used to getting bit off a lot. But one thing, even if that pike wouldn't have bit me off, this is only 10-pound test line. Whenever you catch a nice pike like that, I always cut the line and retie anyway. But what you want to do when you retie is cut back at least 3 feet or so, 2-3 feet. Get down to some fresh line. Trust me, if you don't retie, you're going to end up getting a big bass on or another big pike and a line will break right off. Oh, that guy hit that hard. You know, I like to catch them with the minnow, but something about using these minnow baits, you get a more vicious strike and almost visual like that fish. I just watched him. He'd come up and smoke that. That's what it's all about. Oh, man. I always tell us the people I caught a million of these things over my life, and I love every one of them. Another thing that's been happening today is typical of the fall is I'm not getting a lot of short strikes. These fish are on this bait and bam, they're hammering it and they're off and running. Oh well, that's fishing, as they say. Summertime, you come out here some days, they're biting kind of light. You don't know if it's a small fish or you're just not setting the hook right. But you get into the fall like this, those fish, they want it. If you get to the fish, there's not too much short strike. It's a bam, hard hit. If you get a good hook set, you got the fish. It's the advantage of a nice, sharp hook. You don't miss as many fish. Decent fish. Porky little bugger. What I do when I first cast it out, I tighten my line up and I just give it a couple of quick twitches and then I let it sink. When you're not doing anything, that bait is sinking. I'll let it sink for maybe 5 or 10 seconds and then I tighten up and I just give it a couple more twitches and I let it sit. What happens is those twitches, what attracts the fish, but they hit it when that bait is dropping. So you don't want to twitch it continuously. You might get a lot of shorter strikes, but when that minnow just eases itself down, just flutters down, that's when the fish comes up and grabs it. Again, these minnow baits, they sure strike it hard, and you just hold on. I did snag them. That's what happens when you get a good hook set, see? Good thing we're letting these go, because you know, you legally couldn't keep this fish. Because this is a fouled hook fish, even though I didn't intentionally try to snag them. My favorite fall smallmouth bait, if I had somebody asked me, you're going on the river, even a lake for that matter, I can only pick one bait with me, what would it be? Right, this bait right here, the Case Sinking Shad. It's a 5-inch bait. It's a lot of plastic minnow imitation baits like this on the market, but one thing, they don't sink. This bait sinks. You cast it, twitch it a little bit, let it sink, and it drives the smallmouth wild. If I was just using one that I twitched across the surface, I'd catch fish, but I wouldn't catch as many big fish. This bait is just dynamite with big fish. That Case Sinking Shad is an excellent bait, but sometimes, you know, you get a cold front, fish are a little bit finicky. I got a solution. I dropped down to the sinking minnow, which is that's 3.5-inch bait. It's just fantastic. Those light bites, all of a sudden I got fish. So I take my casting rod with my 10-pound fluorocarbon, work the shad on there, and I take my spinning rod. Now I've got some 8-pound fluorocarbon line, and I've got the sinking minnow, and I got both bases covered. Fish are a little bit more aggressive. They just pound the shad, but if the bite lightens up a little bit, which happens when you fish, drop down, use the Case Sinking Minnow, and you'll continue to catch fish. Oh yeah, nice. Not as big as I thought again, but now watch that hook. Nice chunky bugger on the old minnow bait, Case minnow here. Another bait that's very deadly in the fall is crankbaits. Crankbaits are a lot of people's favorite fall bait. This is shallow running crankbait, deep diving crankbaits. Sometimes in the fall, an angler will have a trouble to go out. I can't find any fish. Like a lot of times, I can go out to my favorite spot, boom, 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 catching fish. But in the fall, fish can be a little scattered. When you find them, you can find a ton of them. But a crankbait is the best bait in the fall, a search bait to find active fish. When you find them with the crankbait, keep fishing. Maybe all of a sudden then they stop. Well, then switch over to a soft plastic bait. But you know how I catch most of the big fish in the fall? Whether it's smallmouth, muskies, pike. I got to be honest with you. You could have a tackle box full of a ton of lures, but it's live bait, particularly large minnows. If you're going fishing in the fall, whatever fish you're looking for, if you want a trophy fish, make sure you bring some minnows along because that's the best all-around bait in the fall. I just threw it out and I got a fish on right away. Look at that. That didn't take long. fun. And they're all toads today. Some days you get some smaller fish mixed in, but these are pretty much all big toads. Look at that. Oh, what a dandy, huh? Look at how fat. Look at that belly. Pretty much a fall thing, especially this size. Now in the spring of the year I use a lot of minnows. But it's cold water thing more than anything. But in the spring I use them. I don't use them in the summer. But these fish are grouping up, stacking up big time. They're putting on the feed bag, and they just love these big. This is a big 4-inch red-tailed chub. Pretty hard to beat it. The more we get into fall, the colder the water gets, the more the minnow bite is on. Another one. That one took a lot longer. It took about maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes for that one. Little guy. But it's good to see these small ones in here, because if they were all 18, 19 inches, that might not be good for a couple years down the line. But their natural reproduction of this river is just, Menominee here, is just excellent. So there's going to be plenty to go, and in about 5-6 years, that guy be 18 inches. Can we be so lucky to catch another one right away again? Oh yeah! Little deeper, catch a fish. Go in the shallow weeds, we catch a fish. This is not really that big of a fish. It's just a 17-incher, but are they fat? These are fat fish. Look at that, huh? Beautiful river fall smallmouth. Talking again about fishing in the fall, and one question a lot of people ask me, I give a lot of seminars, go to a lot of sports shows, and they ask me, I like to fish in the fall, where should I fish? What kind of lake, a river, where should I go? They all have their place. Rivers can be productive, deep clear lakes can be productive, even your small little pothole lakes can be productive, and they're all good in the fall, but the tip I can give you is knowing when to fish where. You think, what are you talking about? For example, you got a big, deep, clear lake, couple 1,000-acre lake. What happens in the fall? You get a lot of northwest winds, a lot of cold fronts come through. On that lake, you're going to have 2-3 footers. You want to fish over there? You're silly. You come to the river here. I can fish on a river. I can have 30-mile-an-hour winds, and I could find a little bend in the river, a little weed bed, and I could catch smallmouth all day long. A clear, calm day, guess what? You say, that's when I'll go to that lake. No, that clear lake, you got another problem. But you get a day, maybe you got a little 10, 12, 15-mile-an-hour wind, a little chop on the water. That's the place. You go on a deep clear lake, find a couple of rock bars, you'll find walleyes, smallmouth bass. If there's muskies in the lake, they're going to be there. And most of this action can be right in the middle of the day. Little pothole lakes, they can be good at any time once the weeds die. Like late October and early November, go to a lake like that, they can be excellent too. So you got a wide variety of different lakes to fish in the fall, and fish them all at the right time.
Here's a look at what's happening in the UP. The Department of Natural Resources Eastern Upper Peninsula Citizens Advisory Council will meet Thursday, October 17th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Comfort Inn in Newberry. Among other things, the agenda will include wolf season and license sales updates and preliminary bear season harvest reports. CAC meetings are open to the public. Pheasant season kicked off here in the Upper Peninsula in Menominee County and portions of Iron, Marquette, Dickinson, and Delta counties on October 10th and runs through October 31st. The bag limit is 2 male pheasants daily with 4 in possession. A small game license is required to hunt pheasants. The DNR recently released its deer status and prospects report. The effects of last winter left many deer in poor condition coming into spring, making for lower numbers of fawn sightings compared to recent years. In general, hunters should expect to see fewer deer, especially in the younger age classes such as fawns and yearlings, but still expect to see a decent number of 2.5 and 3.5-year-old bucks this fall. You'll find a link to the complete report on our website at realoutdoorsup.com and click on the helpful links icon. As you know, hunting licenses for the upcoming wolf hunt went on sale at noon on September 28th. All 1,200 licenses initially sold, but if you're still in the market for one, it's worth keeping an eye on. It is possible that some of these transactions may be voided or abandoned, and then added back to be sold. License sales will officially end on October 31st. Here's the scoop on where all those licenses went. Over 95% were purchased by Michigan residents. A total of 4 licenses were sold to non-residents. 65% were sold at license outlets and 31% online. 25% of the licenses were purchased by UP residents and 73% by residents from the Lower Peninsula. 95% were males and 85% were under the age of 65. By county of residence, Oakland County led the stats with 65 licenses purchased, followed by Houghton and Gogebic counties with 53 and 48. You can find a complete listing of these sales at realoutdoorsup.com, and again, click on the helpful links icon. If you've been thinking about a fall color tour, now is the time to do it. Most areas across the UP are at peak or just past, so you best hurry. Well, that's the show for this week. I hope you enjoyed watching. We'll see you next week right here on Discovering.